All right, you guys, happy Tuesday. This is Trisha Turner. I am Trisha Turner. This is Walk Away Wealthy, formerly known as Anything But Average. We've actually been on this podcast running every Tuesday at 12 o'clock for over 2 years now. And I think that's pretty freaking cool. The purpose of the podcast is to bring you positivity, bring you success stories and pro tips to help you grow your business or grow your life and live in abundance. And so I have someone that's really good at this with me today. This is my good friend, Randy Olive, and he's always bringing positivity, and he believes that we all should be living in abundance. So welcome, Randy.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. I mean, obviously we talked about this the other day. You're like one of my favorite people in the industry. It's just fun to be in this space.
It's super cool. And you guys, like, we met each other. It was like, was it 3 years ago, Randy?
Yeah. It would have been about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we were on a panel, and he was sitting on my right side, and we work at different companies. We represent different companies, and we had like an instant connection, instant banter, and we just kind of took the panel over ourselves.
It was so much fun. Yeah. No, that was great. And that's the thing that, like, I think I love about this industry. You know, when you look at it, we've got to be able to start continuing to be in those connecting spaces. A lot of times we get to the space where we I don't know, for whatever reason, we just want to make it on our own. I don't know if it's like a chip on our shoulders or whatever, the entrepreneurial chip on your shoulder. And yet the things that I have that have been so good to me in this industry have always come from stepping outside of that space and being in the world where I can share and be shared with, and to be able to grow together with people. Like, you've got to be in these events. You got to be out and with people.
You do. There's synergy. So for you guys that don't know Randy, I want him to, let's get a little bit of his backstory. Let him know, he's in real estate with us, clearly, because we collaborate together. But Randy, tell him how long you've been in real estate, a little bit of your backstory, if you could, please.
Yeah. So I've been in real estate now for 7 years, a little over 7 years. I jumped into it from oil and gas. Oil and gas kind of spit me up, chewed me out, spit me out. In around 2015. And so I had a good mentor of mine who was like, hey, you should go into real estate. And I was like, hey, no way. I have no desire to go like jump into this 1099 role with no benefits, no nothing, and then just start over at 33. Absolutely not. And I was doing this interview back and forth. I was going to go back into oil and gas. And so it was before 99 opened, and I was doing this back road weave to the Woodlands. And I was like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. And so I called back the company that I was interviewing with, because I was going to go work for a team. And I said, look, I'm in, but I need to know that this isn't a pipe dream. See, I had a little bit talk about chip on your shoulder. I was like, don't oversell me on this stuff. I get it. You got to make it sound really cool and glamorous. The sky's the limit and all that stuff. I was like, just sell me the actual bill of goods and let me see what I can do. Because I know that I can bet on myself. I just need you to support me so that I can rise. And again, probably not the right aspect to come into the business. You know, I was trying to get the business to prove itself to me in the very beginning. And yet it became, I think, for me, a good catalyst to see what the reality was inside of the industry, that we are actually, even though we are in competition, we're not competing. We are helping each other grow. Well, the right leaders inside of the space, we're helping each other grow and seeing those things. And so, I mean, I've fallen in love with it to the extent where I went from production, started running a franchise brokerage. I started helping run and manage a franchise. And then in 2020, you know, when everything, you know, was supposed to be going to crap, I decided, hey, let's start a brokerage. And so I started my own boutique brokerage out here in Houston, Texas. And so we have agents all the way from Brookshire to, Beaumont. Like, I have an office here in Houston, an office in Beaumont. And so, yeah.
So I want to go back, because you guys, he didn't mention that it was like the top team in Houston that he was running. I'm not going to drop names unless he wants to, but it's a very well-known team, been around forever, do huge numbers, some of the biggest numbers in Houston. So Randy, you had to have kind of an easy path, people would think, being part of that organization. What would make you want to step out of that and go onto your own?
I love that. So that question comes up a lot. It's like, well, why? You know, the why question. So when I look at everything that I'm doing, I'm going to run a really different kind of analogy. So when you look at Houston, I moved from Georgia originally, came into Houston, and I was working for a church. That's what brought me to Houston. I was working for a church. I was working with students. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And so being here, I thought the churches in Georgia where I come from were big. I got here and there's these massive mega churches. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I could come to church and actually never even see the pastor except for when he shows up on stage. And so in that same vein, when you look at that and you go, okay, so here's a church, this massive church that I could never really connect with because it feels so distant. And yet you look at what they're doing and there's a ton of people there and they're happy and they're involved and they're engaged. And so though I may not like it, doesn't necessarily make it right or wrong. It's a church and it's doing its work. I may go and find myself better suited for somewhere else. When I look at it from the perspective of what was going on inside that space, even though it was such a great space and it was such a good space, eventually, if you're growing and you're rising together, your values will start to be able to either match or they won't. And that's not necessarily your values are right or wrong. It's just that as we grow, I began to start to value things in a different space. I wanted to see things differently in my pursuit of what I wanted to do in growing in leadership and their version of what they were going into pursuing. And those things just became, it was hard to start to merge those things together. And so for me, if I look at values, I really see it as a vehicle. And so we just got to the point where we just weren't in the same vehicle anymore. And so it was an easy thing for me to go, okay, so for me, I get to go choose me. And so that's what I did. I just chose me. So it was nothing against them. And as a matter of fact, I'm actually still, I have no qualms about it. I'm still close to a lot of the people there. I talked to a lot of them. I've helped a lot of the transition, like even though I was left and I wasn't part of that, I helped a lot of the transition and everything. And so it wasn't never this like, oh my gosh, well, you know, hell hath no fury than a woman scorned, which is what we create those stories and we tell those stories. It wasn't that. It was, hey, this door became open and I want to choose it and I want to choose myself. And I'm thankful for the time that I got to spend there. It was truly, I wouldn't be able to be who I am without that. I wouldn't have even gone into real estate without it. And so it was just one of those things where you really like, if I began to evaluate myself and as I rise and I grow, I have to be able to understand that my growth will define who I am more and more and more. And it's just like a relationship. You know, if you look at the levels of conversation in a relationship or communication in a relationship, one of the easiest things is to talk about the weather. Well, I can talk with you about doing business for a really long time until we start to rise together in leadership and I start to understand what your opinions are. If I'm in a relationship with you and you start to share your opinions and our opinions mismatch, that's going to be harder and harder for us to continue to communicate and to be together. And so when those things started to like not misalign, but when they started to differ, it was for me, I had grown my opportunities to be able to pick myself.
So I'm thinking as you're talking, like when people leave a full-time job, because a lot of people do, they leave a full-time job and then they go into real estate. And that's a scary transition because you're basically going from a job where you have a consistent income to a job where you're on your own. So you went from being in the oil industry to getting into real estate and then getting out of production and going into a position where you are also comfortable and you had a steady income, then leaving that and opening your own brokerage. So not only did you just go into real estate, back into real estate, but you opened your own brokerage. Walk me through that, because a lot of people never take that step where they leave that comfort zone to get super comfortable.
You know, so there's a couple of things that I look at when I'm kind of in that space, like kind of forming my thoughts in that space. The first thing is that a lot of times we begin to unfortunately self-talk the negative way more than we ever self-talk the positive. You know, and so when we self-talk the negative, it puts the brakes on. So if you were trying to merge into traffic, it's almost like you see your opportunities, but if you slow down when you're merging into traffic, you'll actually never merge into the traffic. And so when you start to look at that negative self-talk, it's going to slow you down. You're going to have a natural slow. And so you have to be able to press on the gas and just say go. So that's one of the things is that what are you doing to be able to surround yourself with the mentality side of it? So am I playing the, you know, devil's advocate stuff? Am I doing A, B? What am I doing to actually like play the columns and say like what is good and what is like going to be a challenge? And do I have the leverage and the opportunity to find people around me to help me grow? Because like the reality of all of that is we're never actually ready to stomp on the gas when we think we're able to stomp on the gas. We're just not. If hindsight is 2020, I've never been ready to stomp on the gas. I just did because I waited and I believed in myself and I bet on myself. And so that's one of the things is I just bet on myself. I was like, you know what? Yes, there's these things that I don't know about yet, but I just got to press on the gas. The second thing that I look at is that the people who surround me, it's different when I surround myself with yes people. And so if I had just yes people and they were like, oh man, yeah, you'll do great. You'll do fine and everything, you know, that's a false it's not really going to help me move forward, because you're going to say yes to everything I say. And if I'm surrounding myself with yes people, I'm aware of that. I'm not an idiot. I'm aware that I'm surrounding myself with yes people because it helps me feel good. So now when I need those people to encourage me to take a step forward, I'm actually probably starting to doubt myself a little bit more, because have I surrounded myself with enough of the people who cut across my grain? And so I always try to find people who I know that will tell me when I'm about to make a bad decision. And if those people, and I'm not talking about just like a pessimistic or a negative version of that, but somebody who loves me, trusts me, and wants the best for me, if they go, hey man, I hear you, and here are the things I just want you to consider. Well, if I have great answers for that, and I know that I have support for that, then it's easier for me to press go. So the people that I surround myself with, it's going to be a really big catalyst for me to actually press the send button. And then I'm just, the frank side of it is you have to be smart about the finances. I did have a bit of a nest egg. I have chewed into that to start this. The reason why I wanted to start it, and the values and the mission and the vision and all that stuff of why I wanted to start that, it has eaten into the income. That was my goal. And so nothing has caught me off guard. It's not easy, but nothing has caught me off guard. And so to have that nest egg, to have the people there that are around me, that I'm surrounding myself with those who would encourage me and help me grow. And then again, like the negative self-talk, which is probably the hardest one. And I think the analogy of merging traffic is a really good one, because how many times have we all been frustrated at the person who's trying to merge and then they stomp on the brakes? It's like, no, the way you merge is you got to you got to press the gas. You've got to be able to speed up to get into the lane. When we negative self-talk, regardless of our intentions of good or to go to that place, we are slowing down our ability to actually merge into the space that we know that we can get to.
I love that. So I love that you push through. Now I'm like thinking about timelines. So 2020 market was super busy, right? People don't realize the real estate market. So I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been through 2 downturns. This is the 3rd one. And so when we see like signs of things changing, like I was talking in our sales meeting yesterday, and I was like, for me in my career, January was always the slowest part of the year for me. And I would usually spend like the whole month of January working on marketing and things I was going to launch that year. However, in January of 2020, the market shifted and we started on this seller's freaking market out of control. And then of course, COVID hit and it took off like crazy, like a market we've never seen. Now, here we are today. It's August 2022. The market has completely changed again. And I think we need to talk about that, Randy, because you have been in the business for a long time and I've been in the business. And so we have seen this. We come from high volumes. And I think the media doesn't deliver the correct message. And I think more real estate agents need to be given facts, and more homeowners and buyers need to be given facts. So when you look at what's happening now compared to when you opened your company just in 2020, what are you seeing the difference in the market?
Oh man. So the biggest difference that I think you hit it on the head, like people are trying to create stories, and especially right now, like we used to, and I say we, like I'm 40 years old. So when I say we, I mean almost everybody. It's hard for me to not put in the picture that like there are people who have never actually been outside of the internet. Like I grew up and I got the internet. There's people who have always had the internet. But I'm going to say we in the sense that like in past markets, the way we got the news was on 2 times. You get it in the morning, or you get it in the evening, or you read the newspaper. We are now in an age where you're always getting the news all the time, and there's no verification to a lot of the spaces where we get the news. And so we have so many different kind of false perceptions of what's happening. And then I honestly think one of the challenges with it is that like real estate agents create a false perception about what's happening in the market too, when we use humor, when we go like, oh, this market is nuts, and we use our memes or use our reels to create humor around it. People will take that and look at us like, oh my gosh, like Randy's falling apart. They don't understand that we're making a parody of it, And so I think we've kind of created this stirring of how do we be entertained by the information that's being delivered. And once that begins to happen, we take it for truth. And so when we look at it, we go, okay, so this market is actually going to be destructive if we buy a house right now. And that's just not true. And especially when we get into, kind of what's happening with interest rates. That kind of started it, right? The interest rate, the craziest, like the Fed's like, we're going to raise it for, 1%. And everybody goes like, oh my gosh, 1%. And we don't realize it. If we really kind of dug into the economics of it, the way that the market is corrected is with the interest rates. That's just the way things are done. We stimulated the economy to make sure that things were going to be good, and things were really good. That's the purpose of it. But if you are only eat candy for breakfast, you're going to have a stomach ache. Eventually you have to correct that, and you have to come back to actually nourishing things that help grow our economy and help make things stable. And that's where we're at right now. Things are getting to a stable space. It's just so hard because we're so short-term minded that we think like, oh my gosh, everything's nuts and I don't know what to do. So I'm looking at the market right now going like, it's a really healthy market to buy real estate in.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of really great products out there to help us buy real estate. And so this false pretension that like it sucks to be a buyer, those days are gone, but we're still talking about them.
Yep.
You know, those days are gone, but we're still talking about them. Houston, I think, is having the biggest challenge. And I know that I've danced around a couple of topics, but I think Houston's having one of the biggest challenges from just kind of the consumer standpoint, because Houston has been such an affordable city for so long. It has been one of the most affordable cities to live in for the amount of opportunities that are here.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way we could have lived in the space that we were for forever. Like the prices for homes had to go up. And I think that we're in the space now where it's starting to level out. I think you'll see where the house pricing is going to be now. But so much of what was happening when the interest rates are so low like that, people don't have to really consider their budget as much for purchasing a home. There weren't a whole lot of people going, can I budget this? They were just looking at it going, you mean I can buy a house and my payment's $1,450 and I'm renting for $1,700? I'll just flip flop those things and I'll go buy, which works when it's 2. It doesn't work when it's like 4, because you've got to start to consider your budget, because the price of your home may be, $200 a month more. So now you're swapping $1,750 for $1,750 and all of the fees that come along with purchasing a home. So education, I think, is missing from the standpoint of like, no, you can still do this. You just have to put more thought process. You have to have a professional. And I'm going to sound rude. I think real estate agents created a really challenging space for that, because they just took everything and they said yes. Nobody looked at anybody and said, hey, I want to help you. This is going to be a really hard conversation. Do you mind if we look in your budget real fast? Mm-hmm. And I think that's when I bought my first house, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just jumping into it. Luckily, I had somebody who was a friend that was doing the loan. She looked at my credit and was like, dude, you're an idiot. And so, like, she didn't say that, but that's essentially what she was saying. And so I went back and worked on all that stuff. I turned in a budget to her. I looked at it. I bought my first house. I think I was at 6% when I purchased my home.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was able to purchase it. I stayed in budget. We were able to save. We're able to live in a great home. It's like we're back to that space now.
Yeah.
Like we're back to an even market. We're back to a space to where like the opportunities are there. There's just too many people doing the doom and gloom thing, which just doesn't exist. There's so much opportunity out there. Like I have a house on the market now that's been sitting on the market for 2 weeks at 260. That would have sold 12 times by now, 3 months ago. But people have this fear over what's happening in the market, and you just have to be a student of it. Find a good professional in the side of the real estate space. Find a good professional inside of the financing space, because like there's so many opportunities. I think you and I were talking, like you've got a guy who's like got like a plethora of opportunities inside of financing that you don't have to go like, here's your 30-year mortgage at 6%. Enjoy paying this off for 30 years. Like there's so many options.
I think like I was a lender from 2004 to 2010. So I was a lender during one of the downturns, and I know what the subprime market was like. I know everything that was happening because I was involved in all of it. And then when that was done, the market was still and frozen for a long time. And it's like a confused mind just says no. So right now, I believe that media has just confused so many people's minds where there's like, I'm not going to make a move. I'm just going to stop because I don't know what to do. I'm paralyzed.
That is a nail on the head. Like, say that again. The confused mind says no. That's it. That is absolutely it.
Yep. And I think we, the experts, need to deliver clarity. Yes, the market has changed. And I tell people all the time, like, okay, the real estate market pretty much follows the stock market. And you get warned, you get like, there's signs that the stock market is changing. And people that are experts, they let you know, hey, you might want to move your money into a safer stock, or you might want to pull it right now because things are changing. You're about to lose your ass. The real estate market's the same way. Like we were talking about this coming. This is coming. We're seeing days on market is longer. We're seeing fewer offers are coming in. Signs are coming. But unfortunately, there was a lot of people out there delivering a different message. And so homeowners and sellers ended up getting really greedy. And they were like, I want this for my house, and I want the buyers to pay the title policy, and I want the buyers to pay this and this and this, and I'm not doing repairs and don't do inspections. It's like, whoa, hold on a second. Like everybody lost their mind and threw like caution to the wind for everything. It's crazy.
Well, it's funny. One of the things that I actually liked least about that market, people were making money, but like, I don't think it's ever a good market when somebody's being taken advantage of.
No.
And I just don't think I just don't think that's right. Like, obviously there's a buyer for everything, but there was so much of it that was just this like, no, I'm going to take advantage of. And so I love that it's coming back. I hate that it just hit like a brick wall. Like the market has just stopped.
Totally.
It's going to come back. That's just kind of, it has to happen. Right. So it'll come back, but it was just, I hate that it needed to get to that space, but I'm actually glad that it did, because there's so much that real estate agents who didn't know how to operate. There's so many people that came in because they saw the opportunity, didn't know how to operate in a market like this, are now learning that like, no, you have to be an advocate for your people. You can't just say, well, this is what it is, so you just say yes. It's like, no, you can encourage and coach people to say no. Your sellers getting to the space where like, well, my house is gold plated. It's like, well, no, it's not. You're competing against that house now, and that house has been sitting on the market for $10,000 less than yours, and it's looks way better than yours. So you've got it. There's again, it's just the balance is coming back, and so I hate that the brakes were hit. Although I'm glad that it did, because we needed that jolt. When I look at it, like you said, the signs and everything, if you were listening to and watching people who are in the industry talk about the industry, you knew that this was coming around. Like I kept saying from the very get-go, as soon as that builder inventory changes and adjusts, that's going to be a catalyst that's going to help move things forward. Houston is very suburban. Like the way that real estate moves is through the suburbs. Like we're leveling up tiers. Well, that builder inventory has to be able to catch up. If you look at anything right now, builders are advertising their butts off, which means they are in need of product moving, which means now they have product on the ground. Well, that was one of the things that, I've been saying it since the craziness happened back in 2020. So since the summer of since about March of 2021, I'm like, as soon as builder inventory adjusts, it's not going to take long for everything to switch. And it's just true. It did. People started advertising like crazy. The interest rates were a part of that catalyst. Like as soon as interest rates start to get up into that 5-6, you're going to see it adjust. Well, that happened. As soon as you start seeing a couple of more days on market, that 2 or 3 more days on market is a sign that within a very short period of time, that 2 to 3 days is going to turn back into 30 to 40 days on market. And now, so we're starting to see all that stuff. So we're coming back to a market that was like I would say like 2018.
Yeah.
And 2018 was a great year. Like it was a really great year. I helped a ton of people get into homes. We got to see multiple homes before we bought one. We got to figure out which part is the best part. We got to negotiate back and forth. It was really like when you look at for a win-win, it was absolutely the most opportune state for a win-win. And literally everybody involved in the process won. I got to sell my house for what I wanted to.
Yeah.
The real estate agent helped me out in a tremendously way. The buyers were able to get what they wanted for as close as they could. Loan officers were paying attention, and they were they were advocates. And so you didn't see all this, like, I'm too busy, I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to say yes to everything and just press go. It's like, well, whatever happens, happens. Now you're watching people slow down, logically look through things and process their emotional intelligence to help people get where they need to go.
I was talking to my agents yesterday, and I was like, it's really simple. Number one, the market that we just came out of, which pretty much ended in June, it was unheard of. We had never seen a market like that before. So it's like, it's hard to predict like how long we're going to be in this lull. In a normal market, we're in a lull right now because in Houston, school is just kicking back in. The next 2 weeks is going to be back to school with kids. And the market always slows down when it's back to school, and it always slows down the week of Labor Day. So you basically have about 3 weeks in a normal market of a lull. So are we back to a total normal market? Maybe, maybe not. Time will tell. But what I do know is that every single day we're watching more inventory come on, and fewer buyers are out buying right now. So I told my agents yesterday, this is a great thing, because instead of you guys going out with your buyers to see 2 houses, you're actually going to go see 8 or 10. And of the 8 or 10, your clients may actually like 4 or 5. And so you have options and choices, This is great. Who wants to just go buy one thing?
Yeah, so I think that's the thing is that, and I had a fellow who was in one of my classes say this, and I agreed with it to a certain extent, but there's a lot of truth kind of underneath it. Is that we weren't in an inventory crisis. If you go look at the inventory, we were not in an inventory crisis. We were in a speed crisis. Everything
Yeah.
was coming on and off. That's the crisis that we're in. Everything was moving too fast.
Yeah.
So if there's only one home in my neighborhood, and it's going to sell in 5 days, well, that's the only thing I got to go for. Well, that's kind of debilitating to somebody who wants options. They're not going to just clamor for that. And so now that this one stayed on the market for 7 days and then this one comes on the market, well, now I've got two options. Well, the days on the market still isn't nuts where it used, and I say nuts, like, gosh, I've been in a market where it was 65 days on market was normal,
Right.
And so it's so funny how we talk about things like, oh my gosh, it's nuts. It's been on the market for 2 weeks. It's like, yeah, that's really good. And so anyways, days on market normalizing is really going to help us, I think, as a consumer base go, okay, I have options.
Yeah.
And options help people really to be able to, I guess, get a confidence in purchasing. Like, I want to go to the store. If I want to buy a computer, I'm going to look. I want to weigh all the options that I can so I can make the best decision for me and my family.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I may not like that house. And there was a lot of people in the last 2 years that bought houses that they didn't even like. And just because they couldn't find anything, they're like, oh, fine, oh, this one will do. It's like, who wants to buy this will do anything? You know?
Yeah.
No, it should wow you. You should be like, oh, I got to have this house, We're going back to that. And I think here's another thing, Randy, that I think about too, is when the market got crazy like it did, it pushed out first-time home buyers. Like, they couldn't compete.
So, yeah, I actually have so I still think we haven't seen the end of those woes. That was built in for too long. So when you look at everything, and I tell people this all the time, and I have this conversation with agents in our brokerage, is that everybody tiers up in buying their house.
Yep.
We knocked out 2 tier levels for a really long time.
Yeah.
So this person here, this second and third level tier person who is going to want to resell their house in the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, their buyer pool isn't going to have the equity in a home because they don't own a home.
No.
To be able to go up to that next tier. So I still honestly think we're going to have some challenges with our buyer pool. Jobs will help in Houston. Jobs will help. But if this was happening in a city where like it's not like a big major job market, they would be struggling pretty poorly in the next 3 to 5 years because nobody can take their equity and move up into their next home because it doesn't exist, because they don't own a home, because we've knocked them out of the market for 2 years.
Yep. And another thing people don't think of, so not only did it hurt the first-time home buyer, eliminated them, but VA and FHA borrowers.
Yeah.
The VA, for one, was like, they weren't getting crap. And not because there's anything wrong with that product, but because cash is always better, of course. And we were having so many cash offers come in, and conventional, of course, because the appraisal waiver was being done. So then people can come in and grossly overpay for a house and offer $100,000 cash over list price. And all right, let's do it. And you can't do that in an FHA or VA loan. So it eliminated those buyers too, which isn't fair.
I was honestly really frustrated with the VA side of things. And I can understand, some people who can get into the FHA can get into conventional, but like the VA is a benefit. And I was furious with that because people would talk about it like it was just subpar. But like, if you really look at the VA, and I don't have to stay on this very long, but like when you look at the VA, when somebody is approved for a VA loan, that's a done deal. That thing is going to close. There's so much protocol that goes into that. And it's such a massive blessing for those who have served. It really, that one frustrated me, I think, the most. I think I probably talked about that way more on a soapbox than I ever needed to, but it was frustrating to watch those buyers not be able to buy. It's just, it's disappointing. Like I said, I didn't like the market because when people get taken advantage of, it's not a good space. And there was a lot of people who are taken advantage of.
Well, and then too, like, think of the buyer's agents. Like, I was talking to my agents yesterday. It's like in that market, people don't realize, like, for one buyer, you may go out and show them 40 or 50 houses. You may write 40 or 50 offers and never get them in a house.
Yeah.
And that is exhausting for those buyer's agents and for the buyers. Like, they grew weary, like just disgusted with the whole market. So it had to stop, Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that was coming into that space too, that was really the frustrating thing, was all the investment. So these big conglomerates that were putting together the investments. I do love that they've gotten skittish. We needed them to stop buying. And again, I look at the future minded side of things. I'm a little bit worried about what inventory. I think it's different in Houston because, again, the job market, and we still have so much land to build on. So there's going to be new build that'll help replace that. But there's a lot of inventory that's now gone for the next 15 years. There's inventory that we'll never see for the next 15 years because so much of it was scooped up by these conglomerates purchasing rental properties that are these income producing properties. And so that was also a challenge that, like, I couldn't win because these people were looking at it going into a portfolio. And so if they had enough in their portfolio, the balance of winning some and losing, like, I'm going to overpay for this one, but I underpaid for that one. They have this curve that they get to play on. Whereas I'm just trying to find somewhere for my family.
Oh,
That
wow.
was hard, you know?
Yep. Okay, so I'm glad you said that. So when you look at like statistics, and Grant Cardone, I always study his stuff, and I love Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone says 57% of the home sales were bought by investment groups. They say statistically 1 out of every 3 homes were bought by investment groups. There's 2 different outlooks on it. However, either way, that's a huge number of homes that were sold to investment groups. And their goal is, to hold them and turn them all into long-term rentals. So when Grant Cardone talks about this stuff, he talks about his belief is that America is going to become like a renter's world, and the American dream of home ownership is going to end up leaving. What's your thoughts on that?
I hope not. Yeah. So that would be interesting to see. I honestly don't know. Like, I don't know enough about the data to really weigh in really heavily on that. I do feel like that's a bit of a scare tactic just based off of his, I hope it's okay to say, I'm okay with Grant Cardone as well, but like, that's almost like information biased. That's what he wants to believe because he doesn't believe in like buying stuff like that. He does believe in renting. That's kind of his stance. And so like, is he saying that to like create a stir, again, entertainment side of things? Is he creating a stir? Because if you look at all the big name brands of that, if you go into even like Dave Ramsey, his version of the story is also a little bit to be able to help confirm his own biases for things. So my hope is no. And my gut says no. Just when you look at ownership, I think the only way that probably turns into that space is going to be more along the lines of shared space because shared everything. Like, we used to be told, like, don't get in a car with a stranger. Now we pay to get in a car with a stranger through Uber. It's like I wouldn't go stay at a stranger's house, and yet now I pay to go stay at a stranger's house, right? So the way that I could see that is that my ownership is going to be in a partial ownership of a property. So I could see some of the things shifting into that, but I don't know. I don't think that that's true. So much of the economy is based off of home ownership that I would be curious as to how that would actually work out long term. And if that were true, there would have to be some big major players. Property taxes is what pays for a lot of the upkeep of things. And yet if I'm trying to make money and there's a root of evil inside of that, what will I do to try and save as much as I can on taxes? And then we're not having improvements in our living space. And so I think there's too many factors in that to really make a judgment, but I just don't think that's true.
I know when us that are in real estate sales, it's like, oh my gosh, I hope nothing like that ever happens. Because for one, like one sale, there's like 26 different industries that are involved in one transaction. So can't allow that to happen because we fuel this economy. However, like you and I were talking about before we came on, what people don't realize is that when the market shifts like it did, and it did, y'all need to listen to both of us, because when we tell y'all it happened overnight, like it did, it literally woke up one day and was like, no home sales.
Yeah. It was
just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And so for the average agent out there that may only sell 2 or 4 homes a year, they're feeling this. For business owners like Randy and I, we also are feeling this, but we're aware and we're always prepared for something like this. And we're smart. We're always studying the market. We're always ahead of it. But the agents out there that are struggling right now, I need them to all be paying attention to what we're talking about. They need to be, like you and I talked about, they need to be coming to events where they're going to learn how to grow. Like when the market is down like it is right now, and I told my agents this yesterday, don't freak out there trying to chase every transaction. You need to spend time working on your business, like build your database and reach out to your past clients and nurture them and make sure their kids are okay going back to school. It's time to build relationships and realize that you're going to be in a lull right now. You may not have a bunch of closings lined up right now, but you can build a steady pipeline if you start right now while we have some quiet time. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I actually think I'm going to do 2 things. One, I'm going to come back and just kind of affirm something you just said. So our director of engagement, Macy Villegas, was talking to me one time about when she got started in the business. She went to everything. Like, and when I say everything, she was saying she went to everything, every Trek thing, every HAR thing, and then she went to every title thing. She went to literally every class that she could, and she said that what I was doing was putting myself in a position to be a professional inside of this industry.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs come into this industry and they don't interact with the industry.
Mm-mm.
And so how am I ever actually connecting the dots that I'm a professional in this industry if I am just sitting at my home, I am sitting by myself, I am trying to figure out how to do it on my own, I'm not actually connecting to the industry. When I go to a traditional job, I'm going to go there, they're going to train me, they're going to coach me, and I'm going to be there, I'm going to be in it of it, and my 9 to 5 is consumed by it. But real estate agents, we have the option to not. And I think that knocks us down a peg in the sense that we are professionals. And so it does feel more like a job or a task or something that's just like medial versus kind of like what you're just saying. So coming back and staying connected to what's happening in the industry. If I promise you, I go to a lot of classes that I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm talking about chlorophyll, more like borophyll, and it's just tedious. And yet I'm in a room with like-minded people who are curious about their business, who want to grow, who want to learn. So why would you not want to be around them, even if they're not on your level, or even if they're not even like in your personality? Like, you're like, oh my gosh, I want to like break this guy's teeth out because he's just gritting his teeth the whole time while I'm trying to watch this class. Whatever the case may be, you're still in a room full of professionals with the mindset that you have. Like, how do you lose there? I guarantee you something coming from that teacher, or whatever you want to call them, the trainer, is going to be something you can immediately put in your business. I've never sat in a class and not had some sort of revelation or conversation or moment that I wasn't able to put that into my business immediately. And so I don't lose doing those things. I don't lose going to those classes. I don't lose going, like, I only win. It only is positive, and I'm only able to engage further into the idea of being in a professional industry. And so I'm encouraging anybody, when you have downtime, there's so much that you can do with your downtime, but we choose to be satisfied with I think the con of man is that we're just lazy. Like, I don't care who you are. If I gave you all the money in the world and you got to do what you really want to do, you're going to take the path of least resistance. There's very few people who can't do, like, they wake up and their ADD is off the charts. Where like, no, I've got to do 100 million things today. I'm like, no, I would love to sit down and watch a movie. Like, that sounds beautiful. I sign me up for that. And so when I look at that, of course, our path of least resistance is what we're going to choose. And so we've got to begin to start aligning ourselves with, this is a 9 to 5 job, which is actually, it's longer than that, but we don't connect those things. And so we have lost our understanding of our capacity. Mm-hmm. So if I want to create a business that earns me a 6-figure income, I have to have the capacity of time in my life to be able to get there. If I'm not aligning those two things, I'm only kind of chasing a dream, and I'm not really actually putting any kind of teeth into it whatsoever. And, I have somebody who comes up to me and is like, hey, I want to do this part-time, but I want to close like 125 transactions a year. I'm like, you can't. Yeah. And then obviously you have these really positive people like, yes, you can. Don't ever tell anybody they can't. Sky's the limit. I'm like, no, stop telling people that. Toxic optimists like ruin those things. They're like, no, you can do anything. The sky's the limit. It's like, no, the sky's not the limit, because I have 3 kids. I pick them up for gymnastics on Tuesday. I help drop them off in the mornings. I make sure that I am dad when I need to be dad.
Yep.
On the weekends when they're with me, I'm making sure that I'm doing everything I can to just party with them as much as I can.
Yep.
And so, no, my capacity actually isn't that I can do that. And I don't want to do that, because what I want to do is have life satisfaction. And so I don't need to make the sky's the limit. I just need to be able to.
Hey, you muted. You're muted. Did you mute yourself?
I haven't. Are we back?
Yes.
I have no idea what happened. That's funny. But I need to fix something else. I know, right? It's like good old technology. Speaker is telling me that. All right. Well, here we go.
Hey, what I want you to do though. So
all right. So I can't hear you.
Really?
Are you muted as well, or am I?
Can
No.
you hear me now? No.
Let me make sure it's not. Let me see. I may have to just switch over. We're like, okay, we're doing so good today. This is
Can you
just the
hear me now?
loveliest thing. Let me see. I'll go and switch to. Can you say something?
Can you hear me now?
Oh my, ruining this. You're gonna have to sign language. I can't hear you. I don't know what I did. I broke
That
it.
is crazy. I can hear you. Oh, that's
This is so
crazy.
funny.
I wonder what happened.
I have no idea. I'm so
I
sorry.
don't know,
I
but I
can't
can
hear
hear
you.
you. It's okay.
I can't hear a word you say.
Interesting. Okay, click something else. Let me see. I don't know what to do. Can you hear
Okay,
me now?
you came back. I don't know what we did. Seriously, I have no idea.
Oh my gosh, that is wild. I don't know either. I was like, there's
I don't
nothing
know.
going on the screen. I don't know what just happened here.
Well, I hope everybody's laughing instead of like, oh my gosh, these two. But no, so like I want life satisfaction. So when I look at my capacity, I know that I can get there. Now I've got to be able to fill in the rest of the blanks with the skill sets that I don't have or that I need to enhance. The only way I can do that is to be present with the people who can teach me and show me. This morning I had a conversation with somebody who in our leadership meeting with the brokerage told me like, well, what did you do to do better? I was like, well, no, I really don't have time. And they're like, no, like you have time. I was like, well, not really. Like I started arguing with somebody, and yet here I am going like, hey, everybody, this is what you got to do. It's like, I couldn't take my own medicine. I don't think we understand this. We have such a lack of ability to take our own medicine.
Yeah.
So many people will tell you when they go pay for a coach, like I'm paying, $12,000 a year or whatever for a coach. They're like, they don't do anything but tell me things to do that I already know to do. They just help me align it and hold me accountability to do it. Your need to be involved in your brokerage, in your team, in the industry, in the classes, doing the work that needs to get you there. Like your ability to take your own medicine is so difficult.
Oh yeah.
It is so difficult. And I don't care who you are. It is so difficult. So stop trying to think that every day you're going to just suck it up and do it. You're just not. It's okay to not do this business alone.
Oh,
it
gosh.
is okay to not do this business alone.
Heck yeah, we're
And
better
so
together.
show up for yourself. And showing up for yourself means you're like showing up to the places and the spaces where you can grow.
Mm-hmm. So let's lean on that. So
Yeah.
you guys, well, a couple of things before we wrap up. So I always love for number one, especially when I got somebody on here as awesome as Randy, for him to give like 3 tips for real estate agents and what they should be focusing on to get through this lull that we're going through. So let's start with that, Randy. What 3 tips you got for him?
So I'm very unconventional right now in what I'm telling people to do. Before I would say like you've got to be laser focused on certain things. Right now, I think you need to broaden your horizons. I do think you need to be focused on a few more things than you usually would. So I do think where it used to be less is more, I do think more is more right now. So in my opinion, if you have this farm and you are like, well, I'm only doing like, I'm going to door knock this farm and I'm going to do the calls to this farm. It's like, well, you may need to do one more thing for that farm. So figure out what that one more thing is. So I guess if that makes sense, you've got to do just one more. You got to +1 everything right now. So whatever it is that you're doing, you've got to do a +1. I don't think you got to do what everybody's saying where it's like, no, you've got to like take Adderall and literally just stay up all night working on real estate. I don't think you need to do that, but you have to be purposeful about +1ing everything else that you're doing. So that's one thing that I would say. So if you're going to door knock, don't just show up and hand somebody a flyer. Hand them something that then you're going to be able to connect back to again later. Like, can I come back and bring a thank you card because you did what I asked you to do?
Yeah.
Can I invite you to an event? Forget to be able to bring you something, stop back by tomorrow because I forgot to bring you something. What can I do to really +1 those things? If I'm going to handwrite you a letter, when I mail that letter, I'm expecting that it'll land. Can I call you knowing that it hasn't gotten there yet and say, hey, did you get my letter? I sent you a letter, but I know, like, what can you do to +1 everything? You have to do that right now. What are you doing to +1 everything? Second thing is like what I said a second ago, stop trying to do this alone. Like, who can you do this with? Who are you surrounded with? That whole adage that like you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. Like, well, think about that. That was a hard pill for me recently to swallow. I was like, I'm not really doing very well doing that. And I put my money where my mouth is. And I actually paid to join a group to be able to be part of a mastermind.
Yep.
And now I've got to be able to jump into it. So like you need people right now. This is not Lone Island season. You need people right now. So be
Yeah.
around people. And in fairness, the very last thing that I'm going to say is that like you have to have an understanding about where your emotional intelligence is. Like emotional intelligence is off the charts right now. I don't think we really are connecting as well as we should be on how to interact with the people who are around us. I think we've lost that skill a little bit through the COVID season, but I also think that wasn't a skill that's ever been taught. And so like, what are you doing to develop emotional intelligence? What are you doing to start to move towards empathy? What are you doing to start like finding ways in which you really understand how do I enter in an environment and interact with it versus
Yeah.
how, I like it. It's you're either a thermostat or a thermometer. So when you walk in, you're either setting the temperature or you're taking the temperature.
Yeah.
And so I want to be somebody who walks into the room and that like I can set the temperature, but I can also pay attention to my surroundings, and I can be somebody who's actually working the room in the way that needs to be worked. How can I pay attention to the people who are there? And when I say working a room, I'm talking about your living room, or I'm talking about your networking event.
Yep.
We've lost emotional intelligent ties, and I think that's one of the things that really makes us really good in this industry is capitalizing on our emotional intelligence.
I love that. Those are very cool tips. I love that. So you guys make sure and put that into practice as you navigate your way through this season of real estate that we're in right now. And before we go, Randy has got this event that we're both in. He invited me to be on his panel, which I'm super excited about. Randy, let's talk about that and what your thoughts were and why you did this and what it's about.
Yeah. So the why is real simple. I say this all the time, and I don't mean to be rude about it, but I came into this business from some other areas where leadership was really cool. Like I loved leadership. And then I got into real estate and I started watching that we gave leadership responsibilities to people who were good at their jobs, not good at leadership.
Ooh.
At least. And again, I know people are like, you shaking their fist at me, but that's just true. We gave people leadership that were good at their job and not necessarily good at leadership. And so I began to look around and I said, no, I can be a catalyst to make a change in this space, even if it's a small world of my own space. Yeah. And so we are doing an event to be able to start. I used to do this a lot before COVID, and I'm ramping it back up. I would do events where I'd bring in people who have these brilliant minds. Some of them are contradictory to like the way that I think, but yet again, people-oriented, culture-oriented, values-oriented leaders who truly understand and are leading and that are helping people grow. And so I wanted to keep doing that. It's like my therapist that I have, my first question to my therapist when I was interviewing him is like, are you in therapy? I don't want a therapist who's not in therapy.
It makes sense.
And so all the people who I like to be around inside of leadership, they are all absolutely figuring out and growing in leadership. They all are being mentored and coached by people to help grow in their leadership.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just trying to create space where I can turn that back around and give it to the people who are out there and help them to see that the level of leadership inside of this industry is actually there for those who care and can help you get there. And so we're doing an event. It's I use it as a little bit of a gimmicky thing. It's the 4 C's of like growing a substantial business. And so the idea about it is like building a really strong core, building a really strong culture, starting to adapt to your creativity. And inside of this current economy of real estate, you've got to be able to have the content. And the content now, make sure you know, it's just not just social media. The content starts with all of the things, which is why it's the last thing on the list, is that like the content is really important. But if you don't have your core, if you don't have an established culture, if you don't really understand where creativity comes from, because a lot of times we think, oh, I just got to make this like really cute painting. It's like, no, creativity is just thinking differently about something so that then you can get a result. And so we're coming together to really have what I think the most brilliant minds in that space have those conversations. And so you're going to be speaking on core because you've built a really strong, multiple, really strong businesses. And like core is absolutely a necessary element that we're tossing out right now. We're tossing out this idea of core because we want all the cooler, feel good elements of business. But core, the foundational elements of core is really important. I think you do a really great job establishing a core with the people who are around you, because what you do is you don't take the business thesaurus and create a business. You take who you are and you insert it into this passion.
Yes.
And so the core is essentially you.
Yes.
And I don't think people understand that. When you're building a core, it should be you. When you're building your culture, my mission, vision, values isn't from this book. It's from my heart. And people need to understand that that's okay. When I'm going into the idea of creativity, like I love the idea of, I'm going to quote the Macklemore song. the greats weren't great because at birth they could paint. The greats were great because they paint a lot. And so when you think about creativity, if we're stunted by our ability to get involved inside of our own natural ability to be creative, like we've lost we are losing, we are behind the. And so I'm just looking at all of it, and I want to be able to get people on stage who have this like different way of thinking, can communicate really well, and that we begin to show the real estate world that what leadership is and should be is inside of the relationship economy. And we've got to be able to start building that skill set. And so that's where the event is. That's like kind of my backbone. Obviously, you go look at the description and stuff. It'll tell you the descriptors of like why and the how and all that stuff. But like my heart of it is, I really want to see beautiful minds, beautiful spirits, beautiful hearts lead inside of an industry where we have defaulted to task. I want us to be able to bring back relationship.
I love that. So tell everybody when the event is and where.
Yeah. So it's going to be Thursday, and it's going to be at Grand Central Park. It's a Johnson Development community out in the Woodlands. I think their address is actually in Conroe. And so there's an Eventbrite. When this closes, I'll just tag the event. I think people could go on your page and see it. And so it's on Thursday, this Thursday, the 18th, and it's going to be from 10 to noon. So it's a 2-hour event, not a whole lot of time for you to be able to commit to. And you're going to hear us speak, and then there's going to be a time for us to be able to do a bit of panel talk and Q&A. Because what I want out of the end of it is not just that we were able to be great talking heads, but that the audience who's coming can connect, and now they have another resource and an asset inside of this world.
I love that. I'm excited, and I'm super honored that you
It's so fun. Yeah, of course.
And it's going to be good energy, you guys.
Oh, man, it's going to be a lot of fun. It really is. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited.
Hey, Randy, for people that want to learn a little bit more about you, how can they find you?
I probably interact the most on Instagram. So the @RandyOlive, that's where I'm at on Instagram. So that's the easiest place to find me. Obviously, you can direct message me there. I got all my link trees and all that stuff, but that'll probably be the easiest way to find me. And yeah, I love this stuff. So please interact with me. It's fun.
Yes. And again, like he wants to like launch this even more because COVID has kind of like shut events down for so long that it's like enough of that already. It's time for us to get out and about, right?
Yeah, be together. Like it's just, I am not where I am because I got it here by myself.
No, we're better together.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanks for being here, Randy.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This is so much fun. I appreciate it.
Heck yeah, you guys have a great day.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, y'all.